Dave Campbell, thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here, guys.
How are you doing, sir?
What's that? Sorry?
Oh, I said, how are you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing well. Other than being hard of hearing apparently today, I'm doing very, very well.
That's okay.
I love your backdrop. It is green and yellow, Edmonton all over the place.
That's green and gold to you, sir. That's green and gold to you, Paul. Yes, I'm swimming in green and gold in my office. I've been working from home for well over a year. So my wife and I decided we got to reconfigure this office to be a green and gold setting, and here we are.
It's the commitment when you actually paint the walls. That's where, I mean, I can duct tape up the flag, but I mean, it's one thing when you've got the paint on the wall. That's good.
Yeah, I like your motif. Just put every bit of memorabilia up so you don't even see the darn wall. I like it.
Yeah, it's good. Well, thank you for coming on. I'm glad that we connected last week. I was telling Paul before we were recording here, it's so nice. The CFL stuff is nice for us as a podcast because we can reach out to other media people. We are the XFL media. There's just not a lot. Like, I'm in a group chat with like the 6 reporters that cover the XFL. So it is very nice to have people that we can reach out to and be like, hey, you're an expert in this. What do you think? Because, otherwise we're just talking to ourselves. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
First things first, how are you doing during the pandemic? I want to get the sense of your well-being, your mental well-being, health, physical health. How are you doing?
I honestly think it's been over a year now, and obviously a year ago, we had no idea what hit us. Absolutely none. And a year later, we understand, I think, more what we're going through, but the feelings are different now. I think a year ago, it was a very galvanizing moment for a lot of people. And now a year later, we're just sick and tired of this whole thing. But, I think we just have to steady along here. I know here in Alberta and in Edmonton, we're going through what we would call the beginnings of a third wave. We're trying to get as many vaccinations up here as possible. Canada is lagging behind, unfortunately, and that should start to close in, you would hope, a couple of months. But it's tough. And I think every day is kind of the same day in a lot of respects. But, the nice thing is the weather is getting better up here. We've had a pretty good start to spring with some CFL football, hopefully around the corner very, very soon. And but I think a year in, it's a grind, and everyone is affected by this in different ways. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that are really, really down in the dumps about this. This is a mental health crisis too. But me personally, my family, we have our tough days, but overall we're doing pretty good.
Good to hear.
So, we've been, obviously, we were fans, all this XFL stuff last year. This comes out, The Rock, we start the podcast. It's all this craziness for the last year. Did this CFL news come as a surprise to you guys as it did to us?
I think the answer is yes, for sure. And because this is something that's always been kind of background talk, I think, for a lot of people up here. Hey, there's this league down south. It's the XFL. It's not the NFL, but it's still pretty good. The CFL could use some help. I know they're trying to, really advance their global initiative with what Commissioner Randy Ambrosi calls CFL 2.0. The pandemic hits and it screws everything up, right? So the CFL didn't play last year, unfortunately. The XFL, and when people say the XFL failed in round 2, they didn't fail. The pandemic put them on ice. If I use a Canadian term, put them on ice. It's not a Canadian term, but there's a lot of ice up here.
Yeah.
But it's a silly notion. So it makes sense that the two are talking. Now, I think what's unfortunate is the over speculation that happened almost instantly. They're going to merge and play games together, and I'm going, whoa, what the heck is going on here, right? So now people kind of who have been reporting on this, and very good people that have been reporting on this, now pumping the brakes and going, well, they are talking. I do believe it's more serious than just talking about talking.
Right.
But I think when you have the power of Dwayne Johnson and you have the power of Redbird Capital with Danny Garcia, I think you have to explore it. And a lot of people are frightened. A lot of people are intrigued. A lot of people are excited. So this has definitely covered all the emotions.
I guess real quick, I'm going to jump in with one more real quick. What is the general perception in CFL media of the XFL just in general? Like, is it a joke? Is it a thing? I mean, what do you, because believe me, we've had CFL people, defend the CFL to death, hate on the XFL back and forth. So what's your perception?
Well, I think there's some media that are misinformed about the XFL. I don't know if anyone who are criticizing it, how much they watched it, if they watched it more for 5 minutes, if they watched it more for 1 week. But I do think it's very easy for people that cover the CFL to really get a little bit, get their back up and go, well, why would the CFL merge with another failed spring league in the United States? And I'm going, well, I don't think it's that simple. And I do think there's other good media, and I think all the media up here is good. I think everyone does a really good job overall. But I do think there are other media up here that understand the XFL didn't fail. The XFL was felled by the pandemic, like most of the other sports, right? And for the XFL, because they don't have the dollars with the TV money like the NFL or MLB or NBA or even the NHL. NHL to a lesser degree, and they couldn't play. So I think overall the media respects the XFL. I really enjoyed it. I think the first 2-3 weeks were a little tough, but then it got better. I love watching Dexter McCoyle play because he used to play up here for 2 seasons with the Edmonton Football Team and helped the team win a Grey Cup in 2015. So I think overall, I think the XFL gets a bad rap because people just put it in the category of a failed spring football in the United States, and I don't think it failed. So I don't agree with that with that notion that some people have about the XFL being a failure.
Do you think that? How do you think a potential merger, and I might be getting the cart ahead of the horse here, would help expand the CFL game, help expand the reach of the audience, maybe potentially get more dollars from a TV deal?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of avenues the CFL has to explore here. I do think the XFL could help the CFL in marketing, in branding, in things like streaming rights, in a TV deal, perhaps. And I think the CFL can help the XFL in how to operate a league, broadcast. There's a lot of things, staffing, that sort of thing. There's a lot of things that both leagues can help each other. So I do think this has legs. Now, when we talk about a full merger where you would have the XFL and the CFL playing in one league, that's something I just cannot wrap my head around because the logistics are just, they're wild. You can't play games in a lot of places in Canada in March. You just can't. Okay, like you just can't do it, right? It just doesn't work. And the timing of the seasons, where the XFL would like to be wrapped up potentially by August or sometime in August, well, the CFL likes playing in the fall because we all say Labor Day is when the season really starts to ramp up. You got the rules, you've got the ratio up here in the CFL with 7 of your starters have to be Canadian. And, almost half your roster has to be Canadian. So how do you work with that? So, there's a lot of people married to 3 downs. I'm kind of married to 3 downs. I think for overall, that's something that's so fundamental about the CFL and what's so unique is the 3 down game. But they have discussed up here, the Board of Governors and the CFL and the Competition Committee, how about 4 downs with all the rules intact, here in the CFL? And they haven't gone forward with that. But do I think there's legs here for a partnership? Yeah. For a full merger to have 1 league or 2 leagues become one, that's going to be really, really difficult for a number of reasons. And a lot of them are just logistical reasons.
How are you feeling about the start of the season and the timing right now? We just got off with Matt Mangle. We followed him. He's a kicker, just got signed to the Alouettes. We followed him through the spring league and stuff down here last year. He was saying that, he doesn't want to get in trouble. He had a players meeting yesterday and he felt like the mood wasn't wonderful. So how are you feeling about a potential start of the season here? Because training camp should be starting next month, right? And then the kickoff coming in June, right? Presumably.
Yeah. Traditionally, training camps start mid-May. We don't know if that will happen. There was a report yesterday from a TSN reporter here in Canada. That's Farhan Lalji, who said, and he's really, really good reporter, said that likely mid-May is going to be, or mid-April will be the decision on whether camps start on time. Yeah, players are antsy right now because they're going, we didn't play in 2020. We haven't seen a CFL paycheck since 2019. And a lot of them were hanging by a thread because there was the talks about going to the bubble in Winnipeg and playing a 6-game season in the fall for a couple of months, and then that fell through because the federal government wouldn't give the CFL any basically, any assistance to financial assistance. But I do think there is going to be a season. The question is when. The problem with the CFL is they need fans in the stands, and they don't know when that will be a realistic option. Now, there are 3 provinces, Alberta, Ontario, and Quebec, that are talking with government and health authorities to kind of lay out a framework to get fans back in the stands. And it won't be full stadiums this year, it'll be limited. But I do think there'll be a season. I think the players are getting very, very antsy about, the timeline. And the CFL issued a proposal, which I don't think this has any legs at all. Well, so we could play a full 18-game season, but without fans, we've asked you to take a 20% pay cut of your salary after we asked you to take pay cuts all throughout the off season. And then once we get fans back in the stands, we'll top up your salaries. And they're going, well, I might as well just retire and go get a job, right? So I don't think that would ever happen, but I do believe there will be a season. The question is when, and I would say by Labor Day for sure we're going to have a season. But I could see, and it all depends on the vaccine rollout here in Canada too. That's very important to the league because that would allow for fans probably to go back, and that would make the health authorities and governments a lot more comfortable. But I do believe we're going to get a season. It's just when we're going to have a season.
Yeah, I have a follow-up. We're going to play in the show here before we interview you. Dave Naylor was on TSN last night, and he was talking, a lot of these players, have gotten other jobs and have done other things. And like you said, you waited last year, you wait this year, and now, if they're thinking we're going to go in June, well, now we don't know. I got to work, right? We try to have a lot of the players on from the XFL. We just had Ernesto Lacayo, a kicker. He co-hosted with us last week. These guys that do it full time, you can't just wait around and wonder is this going to happen. So reactions to that. I mean, we're going to play that clip with Dave during the show, but where a lot of these players maybe have moved on by the time this comes about.
Yeah, a lot of players did. Now, I don't think it's as many as we thought. I think a lot of players have hung in there a lot more than I thought, or a lot more players have hung on. Now, let's say the worst case scenario is that they actually did cancel the season for some reason. I would say the 80% of the total player roster throughout the league, I would think they probably retire. And that's the number I was told, because you're asking them to hang on after 1 lost season, after 2. There's no way they can hang on anymore. But I don't think that is going to happen. So Dave's right. I mean, they are getting antsy. Now, I will say the communication between the league and the players is better, and it's something that it hasn't been that way for the longest time, but it's starting to get better. I do think the league understands that they have asked a lot of the players. They really have, and that's why I'm led to believe there's going to be a season. I mean, when you're asking players and you're telling them every payroll around the league has to be cut by $500,000 or a little bit more. You have executives on teams that have cut their salaries, by 20%. They have really shaved down the staffs, especially at the league office. Like it's down by at least half. And you have 2 presidents that have basically come out and said, we're going to play. So to me, they're playing. This isn't window dressing. Where I thought last year there's probably maybe a little bit more window dressing and a little bit more leading the players on than this time around. So yeah, I'm with Dave though. The frustration's there, but I think there's an understanding that we're going to have a season. But the league, like, we're sitting here wondering what this virus is going to do, in 2 hours from now, or tomorrow, or next week, or next month. We don't know. The leagues don't know. I mean, you look at the major leagues. Around North America. I mean, the NHL, they didn't have final approval to play in Canada till 5 days before the season, and they were going through the training camps. So, it's not simple to work through this virus and come up with a plan. But I don't blame the players for being a little bit antsy, one bit.
What about a bubble? What's been the reaction to put potentially a bubble?
I would say 0 chance, 0%. They don't want that. No, they don't want to have a full season bubble because one, it's very expensive. Two, the players do not get paid enough to get the full buy-in, and that's why the season was going to be so short in Winnipeg. 6-game season plus playoffs and plus training camp before that is that I think the total time in the bubble was going to be 11 weeks, and they even thought that was going to be pushing it. So the bubble concept, I think, is in the back pocket of the league. If they need to use it, they can use it because they've planned for it. But yeah, I would say it's a 0% chance we're going to see a bubble. They'll have teams playing out of their stadiums and maybe limit travel, because if you do have to cut your 18-game schedule by 16, 14 to 12 games, hopefully not more than that, then you're probably changing up your cross-country travel. So maybe East doesn't play West and West doesn't play East as much. Maybe you're just playing all your games within your region.
I think what's the reaction I've seen, talking about the pay cut, the 20%, that they're going to reimburse, potentially later, or not reimburse, but move back up when fans come in. A lot of these staff have been on, even if they've taken pay cuts, a lot of these staff have been paid for the last year where the players have not, right? So, I mean, I think that's a frustration too, is it's like, well, yeah, everyone's taking a pay cut, but you've also had a pay cut the last year when I haven't, right? And it's just so weird where in the NFL, the players do kind of rule the roost, right? We have, Tom Brady making this move and basically shifting the entire landscape of whatever on his shoulders, where I just couldn't imagine in a world where the NFL players don't get paid, but yet, and everyone should get paid, but where they don't, but yet the front end workers do. It just seems weird.
Well, in other leagues like the NFL, when you get into a labor dispute, you have billionaires against millionaires, and usually the billionaires win, but the millionaires, they kind of have their way of getting what they want as well, because they create that much money for the owners. In the CFL, you do have millionaires and billionaires because Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment's a $4 billion company, right? David Braley, the late David Braley, used to own the BC Lions and the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and at one point saved the CFL back about 30, 35 years ago. Left gobs of money when he passed away before the end of the year to the BC Lions to operate for years, right? So there's money up here with ownership. But when you look at the CFL, you have millionaires and billionaires against players that make maybe 5-6 digits, right? So it's so unfair. So, but I do think there is a lot more respect between the two sides, especially owners to players. The players have gotten a lot smarter over the years when it comes to labor disputes and collective bargaining, I would say. So yeah, it's usually an unfair playing field, but yeah, there's more power in like the NFL with the NFL player or the NBA player or Major League Baseball player compared to the CFL world. It's just not comparable.
I have a question. It might be might be old by this point, but we discussed it in full detail last week. The UFPA putting out that a statement. What was your initial reaction? What are your thoughts a week later about that statement about them hearing there was cancellation looming?
First of all, I'm happy we have Google so I can find out who the UFPA was. I've never heard of them before. And I'm like, what is this? So, I saw the tweet and I text a source I text someone right in the league office and I said, what is this? He's like, no, this is not true. So, I think it just created a little bit of a, what is this? Like, who are these people? And then you find out quickly they're not affiliated with the CFL or the NFLPA. In the media, we have this phrase called chasing ghosts, when you have to chase a story when there's not even a story. So that's all that was. So, it turned out to be a bit of a loud kind of morning or early afternoon for those that cover the CFL and even the XFL. But it was quickly disputed, and it was a much ado about nothing. But it was it's interesting. I learned about a new players union sort of in North America. That, yeah, I don't know.
One thing, and I think I was listening to the Three Down podcast, and they were talking about, one of the reasons why the CFL has a longer season, more games, extra bye weeks and stuff is, for more fans to come in for the revenue, right? To kind of bolster that up because you get, you can average more. So, if there's not going to be fans this year or, the whatever with the vaccines and all this stuff, I mean, what is the realistic possibilities of them doing it just a modified, if it's by half, or what is a realistic number that they can still do where it's considered, I guess, a season, but where it's maybe not stretching it out, quite as long as they normally do?
Yeah, it's a hard question to answer just because of the question about fans in the stands. But I do believe that the ownerships around the league are okay with having maybe 1, 2, 3 games max with no fans, maybe just to appease the health authorities a little bit more, and then bring in fans after that. So if we're talking like a 9-game season, then you're talking only 6, 7 home games. But then again, you're starting in September if you're doing that, and maybe by that time you can get full stadiums with the shortened season. Well, maybe not full seasons, but you will be allowed to have some sort of percentage of fans in your stadiums. So, or if you feel you can get the approval earlier. Now, when I mentioned the provinces that are asking the governments and health authorities to allow fans in, that's from the NHL level. That's the Edmonton Oilers, that's the Calgary Flames, that's the Montreal Canadiens, that's the Ottawa Senators, the Toronto Maple Leafs. They want fans, and I'm sure the Vancouver Canucks and the Winnipeg Jets are going to follow suit. So the CFL just, they perk right up and go, wow, if they get the approval, then why can't we get the approval? Because we're open air stadiums, and it's been proven that if you're an open air stadium, it's a better environment when you talk about a COVID-19 environment. So I think it's such a hard question to answer. I would tell you the league wants 18 games for sure, just to maximize whatever revenue they can. When can they start that? I don't see a scenario where they could start in June. There was a report up here from Dan Barnes, who writes for a national newspaper called Post Media, that they could start in July, play 18 games, and have kind of a shortened, compressed schedule. Remember, up here it's normally an 18-game schedule with 21 weeks. That's 3 bye weeks for teams. 3. That's too much, way too much. Now, they did that from the health and safety standpoint, and then the players go back and they go, great, another week I don't get paid, because in the football world, you get paid game by game. So it's a moving target right now as far as when they could play, how many games they could play. They want to play a full 18 with as many games as possible to get fans into the stadiums. So I do think they're going to go for an 18-game schedule, but I could see July training camps and August start. I could see an August start and a September, or August camps, September start. Or I can't realistically see a June start. I just can't right now, because the vaccine rollout up in Canada is a bit murky right now. So where we were getting a lot of them, and then it kind of stopped, and now we're kind of getting some trickling in. But the hope is by May more will come in. But is that enough time for the CFL to turn around and get a season going? So my guess is we're going to start probably, I would guess, July, August.
My last question for you today is, where you were talking about, ownership, being okay with, no fans for a couple games. I've seen a lot, all this CFL stuff is new. We're XFL, like, we're just happy to kind of, what did we get? Our season got canceled. The Rock comes back. It's the greatest day in the world for us. We're doing laps around the sidewalk. It doesn't seem like the CFL is in a position to like really play hardball on anything. Yet a lot, and it's not from from fans, from everybody. I keep hearing this like, well, we'd be okay with this. Well, we'd be okay with this. It's like, well, but what leverage do you have at this point? It's a weird mentality, right?
It is, yes. When you're talking about the people you're dealing with Redbird Capital and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, you would seem your level of influence would be diminished, right? Because money is power. I will say this: Dwayne Johnson spent a training camp up in Canada with the Calgary Stampeders, I believe around 1995. The head coach at the time was a fellow by the name of Wally Buono, who is the winningest head coach in CFL history. To this day, Johnson always credits Wally Buono and the CFL, and just, he says, if I didn't have that moment, then I wouldn't have become who I am. And, you know, I'm not saying Wally Buono made him the Rock and a WWE superstar and a movie star and a venture capitalist and things like that, but the relationship that was built between Dwayne Johnson and Wally Buono, it's strong, and they still speak today. So I do think Dwayne Johnson respects the CFL, and I don't think he wants to come in here and steamroll all over the tradition. But at the same time, those in Canada that are just, you know, hanging on to the tradition, I think are closed-minded, and I think they're doing a disservice, and that's been a big problem. And we've had this mentality within the Board of Governors in the CFL. You know, it's a unique league because you have 3 teams that are community-owned, including the Edmonton Football Team, and those 3 are Edmonton Football Team, Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Saskatchewan Roughriders, and they make up half the revenue of the league almost. Then you have 3 teams that are single-owned, and then you have another 3 teams that have groups, you know, and they're worth billions of dollars, right? So it's not like there's no money in this league and that they can't look up, you know, stand up to Danny Garcia and to Dwayne the Rock Johnson and go, hey, we have no money. They can show them their bank accounts and they would be very impressed. So I think there is a big time respect from Dwayne Johnson about the CFL. If there is a full merger, it'll be interesting to see what that looks like, because I have no idea.
Yeah.
Like, I have no idea. June Jones, who coached in Houston in the XFL and coached up here in Hamilton for the Tiger Cats, on a podcast up here, he mentioned probably 4 downs, but a lot of the Canadian rules. So there's a lot of people within the XFL that like the game in Canada. You know, the game in Canada is fine. The business is not. We're not in the world of philanthropy anymore. You know, where I own a team because it's cool. It's great. You know, go come in my garage and look at my nice Ferrari, which is breaking down. And it's then, you know, and I can't afford to fix it because I don't want to. We have to start making money if you're a CFL owner. The business has to be stronger. And if it can be that way under or with, I will say, Danny Garcia and Dwayne Johnson, because I don't think they want to just take their thumb and just press on the CFL and go, we're going to squeeze you for everything you got. I think there is a real mutual respect here. I think Danny Garcia loves the global outreach that Randy Ambrosi has implemented with CFL 2.0. He she likes that. Dwayne Johnson likes that. So we'll see where this goes. You know, it's hard to think about a full merger again, but I can see a partnership for sure in the beginning. I think the full merger thing, that might take, if it ever happens, that might take a lot more time than people think.
Awesome. Dave Campbell, we appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on, chatting with us about the CFL. Looking forward to talking to you a lot more as this thing kind of unfolds.
Paul, Reed, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much. I would love to do it again.
Thank you so much.
Stay safe up there.
You betcha. You too.